Some people wake up before the sound of the day. Not to alarms. Not to voices. Just light, moving slowly across the wall. They stay still for a moment. Not tired. Not rushed. Their breathing is even. The room feels settled, like it has already accepted them. The phone is nearby. It does not light up. It does not move. There is no tension in that silence. No quick check. No small hope hiding under the screen. They notice small things. The hum of something outside. A distant car. A bird that stops, then starts again. Sounds that don't ask for anything. They sit up. Feet touch the floor. The floor is cold, but familiar. This moment has happened many times before. Enough times that it feels routine. They don't rush the morning. There is no reason to. Time feels wide here. Not empty. Just wide. They move through the room alone. Not dramatically. Not carefully. Just normally. As if this is how it's always been. A glass of water. A small sip. The body wakes up quietly. No messages waiting to be answered. No presence missing from the room. The mirror reflects a face that looks rested. Not happy. Not sad. Just calm in a way that doesn't need proof. Outside, the world is already moving. Doors open. Engines start. Voices overlap somewhere far away. None of it reaches inside. They stand by the window for a second. Not thinking. Just watching. People pass by without noticing them. This doesn't sting. The morning continues. Coffee warms the hands. Steam rises and disappears. A small ritual, done the same way each day. There is no conversation in the air. No shared glance. No soft interruption. Only space. It feels peaceful. It feels controlled. It feels like nothing is out of place. And that is the strange part. Nothing feels broken. Nothing feels wrong enough to fix. Everything works. They move through the next minutes without friction. Clothes chosen without comment. Shoes tied without pause. Keys picked up without checking if someone else needs them. There is a lightness to it. A smoothness. Life without adjustment. The silence does not argue. It does not demand attention. It simply stays. Some people grow used to this kind of quiet. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It builds slowly. Day after day. At first, it feels like rest. A break from noise. From expectation. From needing to react. Then it blends in. Becomes part of the background. Like air. They don't label it. They don't think about it too long. There's nothing sharp enough to examine. The morning moves on. Time passes without markers. No one interrupts the flow. It all feels natural. Comfortable. Even healthy. And yet, there is a stillness beneath it. Something quiet, but firm. Like a door that hasn't been opened in a long time. They don't touch it. They don't look at it directly. They just continue. The day has started. And everything seems fine. Some people move through the day without announcing themselves. They arrive quietly. They leave the same way. No one marks the moment. They sit at tables where no one asks if the seat is taken. Not because others avoid them. Because the space already feels decided. They place their things down slowly. Nothing spills. Nothing draws attention. They order food they already know. Not experimenting. Not trying to impress anyone. Just choosing what won't surprise them. They eat at an even pace. Not rushed. Not lingering. They listen more than they speak. And when they speak, it's brief. Clear. Finished before it grows heavy. They don't circle back to add more. Some people stop telling stories that need reactions. They notice how silence feels easier than waiting. So they shorten things. They remove details. They let moments pass without explanation. They check their phone out of habit. Not with urgency. Not with hope. Just to see if the screen has changed. Often, it hasn't. They put it away without disappointment. This part has become familiar. Plans don't pile up. Calendars stay open. Days are flexible. Evenings stretch without names attached to them. They walk home alone without feeling watched. The streets feel neutral. Lights change. People cross paths without slowing down. Some people notice they no longer wait for footsteps beside them. They don't adjust their pace. They don't glance to the side. They walk straight ahead. They choose places where no one expects conversation. Quiet corners. Familiar routes. Shops where the cashier doesn't ask questions. They stop giving reasons for being unavailable. They stop explaining gaps in their schedule. They don't feel the need to fill silence with excuses. When invited, they hesitate. Not from fear. From calculation. They imagine the effort, the timing, the energy it takes to show up fully. Sometimes they decline. Sometimes they accept. Either way, they don't feel pulled strongly in one direction. Some people notice they prepare less. They don't rehearse conversations. They don't plan impressions. They show up as they are. Or they don't show up at all. They grow comfortable with not being updated. News travels around them, not through them. They hear about things later, if at all. They don't chase the missing pieces. They don't ask follow-up questions. They let information stay incomplete. At home, the space reflects this rhythm. Fewer objects. Fewer reminders. Things placed where they're easy to reach. Nothing sentimental left out. They clean without urgency. They rest without permission. They sleep without negotiating time with anyone else. Some people notice how quiet decisions become. What to eat. Where to go. When to stop. All decided internally. No debate. They don't check if someone agrees. They don't wait for approval. They simply move forward. Conversations feel lighter this way. Shorter. Less layered. They end without loose ends. When silence appears, they don't rush to fill it. They let it sit. They let it pass. Others may not notice anything unusual. Everything looks normal from the outside. A person living their life. Going to work. Coming home. But inside the routine, something has shifted. Attention pulls inward. Expectations shrink. The need to be mirrored fades. Some people stop sharing small updates. What they ate. What they saw. What crossed their mind. Those details stay with them now. They don't feel hidden. They don't feel exposed. They feel contained. They laugh when something is funny. But they don't look around to see who noticed. The moment stays where it is. Over time, these habits stack quietly. Each one small. Each one reasonable. No single choice feels final. No moment feels dramatic. It just becomes a way of moving. A way of existing. And most days, it feels easy enough not to question. Over time, the same moments begin to repeat. Not loudly. Not in ways that demand attention. Just often enough to be noticed, if someone were looking. Some people realize their days start to resemble each other. The same routes. The same pauses. The same quiet endings. Nothing feels wrong. Nothing stands out as a problem. They notice how little changes when plans fall through. An empty hour does not feel heavy. A cancelled meeting barely registers. The space simply opens, and they step into it. At first, this feels like ease. Fewer adjustments. Less waiting. Life becomes smoother when it doesn't depend on timing with others. They begin to move in ways that reduce friction. Choosing what requires the least coordination. Avoiding situations that need follow-up. Preferring places that don't ask them to stay long. Some people stop expecting continuity. Conversations don't need to pick up where they left off. Connections don't need to deepen. Everything is allowed to remain temporary. They notice how quickly they recover from absence. When someone fades, the feeling doesn't linger. There is no sharp drop. Just a quiet return to baseline. This isn't because nothing mattered. It's because the system adjusted. Expectations were lowered gently, again and again, until they disappeared. They don't mark the moment this happens. There's no clear decision. No turning point that can be named. It unfolds in small, practical choices. They learn not to wait for replies. They read messages without leaning forward. They answer when it's convenient. Silence becomes neutral. Some people notice how rarely they feel surprised anymore. Good news lands softly. Bad news passes through without resistance. Everything feels manageable at a distance. They keep their inner reactions quiet. Not suppressed. Just contained. Nothing spills outward. They become skilled at being self-sufficient in small ways. Handling tasks alone. Making decisions without input. Carrying thoughts without sharing them. This skill is useful. It keeps things moving. It prevents disruption. But it also shapes how they relate to moments. Joy stays measured. Disappointment stays brief. Nothing is allowed to stretch too far in either direction. They begin to prefer predictability over closeness. Not consciously. It just feels safer to know what comes next. Some people stop reaching first. Not from pride. Not from resentment. They simply stop initiating what might not continue. They let others decide the pace. If contact slows, they follow it. If it stops, they accept it without question. This pattern repeats quietly, each time reinforcing the last. Each time making the next step easier. They don't think of it as withdrawal. It feels more like alignment. Life matching their current shape. They notice how little explanation they need now. They don't feel misunderstood. They don't feel deeply known either. And that balance feels manageable. They organize their lives around this steadiness. Schedules stay flexible. Commitments stay light. Nothing is built that requires constant maintenance. Some people stop imagining long arcs. They think in shorter spans. Today. This week. Nothing beyond that needs attention. They feel calm in this structure. A calm that comes from knowing what not to expect. When something unexpected does happen, they adapt quickly. They adjust internally before reacting outward. They don't show the shift. Over time, this becomes automatic. A reflex rather than a choice. They are not closed off. They are simply organized inward. The pattern does not announce itself. It hides inside routines. Inside reasonable decisions. Inside the comfort of not needing much. From the outside, it looks like balance. Like independence. Like someone who has things figured out. And in many ways, it works. Life continues. Days pass without crisis. Everything remains intact. But the repetition leaves a faint mark. Not visible. Not dramatic. Just a consistent narrowing. Some people sense it only in rare moments. A pause that lasts a second too long. A thought that doesn't fully form. They don't chase it. They let it pass. The pattern continues. At some point, a small moment breaks through the routine. Not loudly. Not in a way that stops the day. Just enough to be noticed. Some people feel it while standing still. Waiting for something ordinary. A light to change. Water to boil. A page to load. Nothing unusual is happening. And that is what makes it stand out. There is a brief awareness. A sense of distance. Not from the world. From themselves. They notice how calm they are. How steady everything feels. And how little it moves them. This calm once felt earned. Like relief. Like space finally opening. But now it feels different. Not wrong. Just thinner. They realize they don't miss specific people. They miss a version of themselves. One that reacted faster. One that leaned in without measuring. This thought doesn't stay long. It doesn't demand attention. It simply passes through. But it leaves something behind. They see how carefully they live now. How few risks are taken. How little is asked for. How rarely they hope out loud. None of this was planned. It wasn't chosen in one moment. It arrived quietly, piece by piece. They recognize the pattern without naming it. They see how often they stepped back instead of forward. How often they chose silence over explanation. At the time, it felt sensible. Protective. Even mature. And it still does. Mostly. But now there is a question forming. Not spoken. Not sharp. Just a subtle wondering. They think about how little resistance they feel. How easily they let things go. How nothing seems to pull strongly anymore. There is no sadness in this realization. No rush of regret. Only a soft noticing. They understand the cost was never obvious. It was spread out. Paid slowly. In moments too small to count. They traded intensity for stability. Uncertainty for control. Connection for ease. Not fully. Not completely. Just enough to change the texture of things. They notice how rarely they feel unsettled now. And how rarely they feel deeply stirred. This balance once felt like peace. Now it feels like something else. Not emptiness. Not fulfillment. A middle space. Held together by habit. They see how well they function inside it. How smoothly their days run. How little breaks down. And that is what makes the realization quiet instead of urgent. Nothing is falling apart. Nothing needs saving. Still, something has been set aside. They remember moments from before. Not specific scenes. Just sensations. Anticipation. Nervous energy. The pull of wanting to be close to something uncertain. Those feelings don't hurt to recall. They feel distant. Like remembering a place visited long ago. They understand now that they stopped expecting not because they stopped caring, but because caring without guarantees became tiring. So they adapted. They adjusted their reach. They shortened their emotional stride. This worked. It kept things manageable. But standing in this quiet moment, they see the full shape of it. They didn't lose something all at once. They set it down gradually. Each time telling themselves it wasn't necessary. And maybe it wasn't. Life continued without it. Days filled themselves. Time moved forward. Still, the awareness remains. There is a subtle difference between being at ease and being untouched. Between being calm and being closed. They don't judge themselves for this. There is no blame here. Only clarity. They see the trade that was made. They see it honestly. Without drama. And in that moment, the quiet feels slightly different. Not broken. Just exposed. The day resumes. The moment passes. But the awareness stays, gently. After that awareness settles, nothing outwardly changes. Days continue in their usual shape. Routines hold. Schedules stay light. Some people notice the effects not in events, but in tone. How things feel, rather than what happens. They move through conversations with ease. Nothing pulls too hard. Nothing lingers after it ends. Words are exchanged. Then they dissolve. They are rarely misunderstood. But they are also rarely read. Deeply. This doesn't cause conflict. It creates smoothness. The world responds in kind. People don't push. They don't ask much. They sense the boundaries without them being spoken. Invitations come and go. Some fade naturally. No one is offended. No one chases. Some people become reliable in a distant way. Present. Capable. Not demanding. Others feel comfortable around them. There is no pressure to perform. No emotional weight to carry. And yet, something remains untouched. They notice how easily they absorb quiet moments. Long pauses don't stretch. Evenings don't feel long. Time folds in on itself gently. There is no dramatic loneliness here. No sharp ache. Just space that stays unfilled. They begin to sense how invisible this space is to others. No one points it out. No one notices its shape. From the outside, life looks balanced. Steady. Even enviable. Some people hear comments about their independence. Their calm. Their ability to be alone. They accept these words without reaction. They are not false. But they don't capture the whole picture. Internally, there is a soft distance that doesn't close. Not because it can't. Because nothing pulls it shut. They stop expecting resonance. Moments don't need to be shared to feel real. They are complete on their own. This makes life simpler. Lighter. Easier to manage. But it also means fewer moments echo. Fewer feelings are reflected back. They don't feel unseen. They feel unmirrored. The difference is subtle, easy to overlook. Some people notice it in rare flashes. Laughing alone at something funny. Pausing after good news. Reaching the end of a thought with no one to pass it to. These moments pass quickly. They don't sting. They don't demand action. The world doesn't push against this state. It accepts it, even rewards it. Less need creates less conflict. Less expectation creates fewer disappointments. Life becomes stable, predictable, quietly efficient. And in that efficiency, something softens. They don't feel driven to change anything. There is no urgency, no dissatisfaction strong enough to act on. The consequences remain gentle, spread out, almost kind. They continue moving forward, functioning well, remaining intact. The solitude is not heavy. It is neutral. It doesn't ask to be fixed. It simply exists. And most days, that feels like enough. Some people reach a point where nothing needs to be decided. Not because everything is resolved, but because the motion has slowed. Life continues at a steady pace. Mornings arrive. Evenings settle. Days pass without asking for reflection. They move through familiar spaces. The same rooms. The same streets. Nothing feels new enough to interrupt the rhythm. There is a quiet understanding that this is how things are now. Not as a conclusion. Just as a present state. They don't search for meaning in it. They don't resist it either. The shape of their days feels clear. Some people notice how rarely they imagine different versions of their life. The mind doesn't wander far ahead. It stays close to what is already known. This isn't a loss. It's a settling. They become skilled at staying where they are. Holding still without tension. Letting time pass without marking it. The silence around them doesn't grow. It stays the same size. Contained. There is comfort in that consistency. A sense of reliability. They know what the evenings will feel like. What the nights will sound like. What the mornings will bring. Nothing surprises them. And nothing alarms them. Occasionally, a thought drifts through. Not urgent. Not demanding. A sense that something could be different. Not better. Just different. They don't follow the thought far. They let it pass like background noise. The world around them continues without pause. People change. Connections shift. New stories begin elsewhere. They remain where they are. Watching. Participating lightly. There is no regret in this. Only awareness. They understand that life did not narrow suddenly. It gently aligned itself around what felt sustainable. The quiet they live in is familiar now. It doesn't feel empty. It doesn't feel full. It simply exists. Some people sit with this balance, not seeking to name it, not trying to adjust it. They accept the steadiness as part of their current shape. The future does not press in on them. It stays distant, undefined, and that feels manageable. There is a subtle openness in this state. Not an invitation. Not a refusal. Just space. They don't know if this will change. They don't need to decide. The days will continue either way. Quietly. Patiently. And in that ongoing calm, the feeling remains. Not calling out. Not fading away. Just there.